DeAndre Hopkins should 100% retire an Arizona Cardinal.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on, leave a comment. YouTube channel trying to get to Locked On Cardinals 3K by the start of the 2023 NFL season. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Still kind of quiet in Cardinal land. First off, this episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game. For those of you who have listened to this podcast for a long time, you know that I love DeAndre Hopkins. Before he was an Arizona Cardinal, while he's been an Arizona Cardinal, and as we're on the precipice of him no longer being an Arizona Cardinal, I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to go down as one of the more underrated, undervalued wide receivers to ever step foot on a football field. I've compared him a lot to Andre Johnson, both of whom, I think Andre Johnson was drafted by Houston as well, both of whom just in the annals of time, just because neither of them really do anything flash elite. Neither of them were lightning quick, but all they did was show up and ball out. And with DeAndre Hopkins now potentially on the move, I just want to go on the record again as saying, even though there's a good chance that he may be wearing a different uniform next season, I think it's the wrong move. He should retire an Arizona Cardinal. And that doesn't mean retire before the 2023 season. The Arizona Cardinals should restructure his contract. He has no guaranteed cheese coming in. Restructure it, make it more DeAndre Hopkins friendly this season, make it more team friendly on the last couple seasons, and have him retire an Arizona Cardinal. And there's a couple reasons why, and I'm going to discuss them today. This is on the heels of Brandon Cooks getting traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 5th and 6th round pick, and people tweeting out like nincompoops, like numbskulls, that, this must drive down the value for a DeAndre Hopkins trade. Stop it. There is no world where DeAndre Hopkins and Brandon Cooks should be put in the same breath. Well, Brandon Cooks has had 7 1,000-yard receiving seasons. DeAndre Hopkins has had 6. Shut up. Think for yourself. Don't look at just stats as the only. You tell me that Brandon Cooks has ever been elite, I'll say hooey fish. You say DeAndre Hopkins has ever not been elite, the aforementioned hooey fish still applies. When you look at DeAndre Hopkins, you see elite. You see fear struck in opposing defenses. You see, in my opinion, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Is he on the fringe now? Maybe. Should he be a Hall of Famer? Yes. And when you look at the Arizona Cardinals in 2023, you say, it's going to be a punt year. Really building the structure, changing the culture, getting the new coaching staff and GM acclimated to the speed of an NFL game, wearing a different hat than they have in years past. And you look at it being a prove-it year for the Cardinals organization, proving to players, elite and otherwise, that they are on the move to change, proving that the past is not the future of this organization, and proving to not only players who are currently employed by the organization, but those who could be potential signings in the future, that this organization is the Arizona Cardinals of past in name only. And I'll tell you what, if somehow Monty Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon, Drew Petzing, Kyler Murray, whoever can sit DeAndre Hopkins down and convince him of that, and sure, it's going to come with a payday, that would mean volumes for the optics of the Arizona Cardinals moving forward. Because he's been tied to, the Giants, the Patriots, the Cowboys most recently. Because I think he quote tweeted something Micah Parsons said. But you think that any of those situations are going to be better than Kyler Murray healthy? And please hold before we're saying, oh, stupid. Take a second. Mike McCarthy said, we're going to run the damn ball in 2023. He said it about 2023. And I know with Zeke gone, it may be a little bit different. But that's going to be like Dak Prescott is capped with his output. He puts up gaudy numbers. Absolutely. But CeeDee Lamb, I'm sure they'll bring Dalton Schultz back if they haven't already. I know this isn't Locked On Cowboys, so I don't know. But they're going to run the damn ball with Tony Pollard and whoever else they draft, whether it be Bijan Robinson or otherwise. And they're going to have Dak on a pitch count, on a throw count, like they have. When Dak leads, when he throws the ball 40 times, they don't win. Dak can't do it. We know that now. Okay? So as fun it would be seeing him wear number 10 in a Cowboys uniform, like I would watch it. I love it. I love DeAndre Hopkins wherever he goes. He was my favorite receiver in the league before he came to the Cardinals. So, with what the Cardinals are trying to do, not this season, but starting next season, him being an integral part of it would be immeasurable. You look at Kyler Murray healthy, Hollywood Brown is going to get an extension next offseason, and DeAndre Hopkins here for the next 3 seasons. This season is a throwaway, so it's a perfect year to pay him more than maybe he's worth at 31, especially with Kyler Murray missing a chunk of games, to keep him here, bought in with the new culture, new regime, and onward and upward to the future. Because what are the Cardinals going to do with the 3rd round pick? Can they still get a first? Did the Brandon Cooks 5th and 6th rounder stigmatize the opportunity for the Cardinals to get a 1st round pick for DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe. Should the Cardinals still look for it? They're going to look to trade him. Yeah. I'm going to dive more into that next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Seriously, thanks for hanging out. Thank you for being a part of this. We're going to need to be in the circle, in the nest. The circle of trust in the nest. I just grouped together Meet the Parents and Old School there, but it was for good reason. We're going to need to be a tight-knit group going into 2023 because it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. Greener pastures ahead. Going to have to get through a couple thunderstorms on the way there. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app a lot. Okay? If you've ever thought about being a GM, if you thought you'd make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dang dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. And this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Cardinals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, Start your dynasty today. DeAndre Hopkins should 100% retire an Arizona Cardinal. And this kind of goes against my normal credo where the Arizona Cardinals need to eat their vegetables before they can do fun things, before they can draft for want instead of need, before they can draft a flashy position as opposed to a necessary one in an effort to keep your quarterback from hitting the ground as much as Kyler Murray has over the last 4 seasons. But with DeAndre Hopkins, you're using him as the wrong word. No, that's not necessarily true. If the Arizona Cardinals can extend DeAndre Hopkins, not just through this season, not trade him around the trade deadline, get a 5th round pick because they're not going to get anything else for him because they're up against the wall, things like that. If they can ink a new deal with DeAndre Hopkins, front load it for 2023 because they're not going to have a bunch of big splashes anyways, and get him bought in. If I need to talk to him, I will. Arizona Cardinals 2.0, I'll talk to him. I will. I'll talk to Hop. And you get him bought in with Monty Osford, Jonathan Gannon, Drew Petzing, Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, etc. That would be useful for the Arizona Cardinals image. It'd be useful for the strength of the new regime, where everybody else in the NFL says, he resigned? There must be something new going on there. And chances are he's probably going to be moved. And chances are he's probably going to be moved for less than he should be moved for. But one of the clear distinctions that I don't really understand, people, it's getting closer to the draft, so his stock's plummeting. He's still DeAndre Hopkins. Just because people say one thing because that's how it's always been doesn't mean that's how it has to be. For the love of everything. Well, his stock, it must be plummeting because, Brandon Cooks and then, aggregators on Twitter making up things that they think are, that they're just regurgitating from other people. And it's just perpetually moving this narrative that DeAndre Hopkins is going to go for like a 4th rounder. Stop. Think. And understand, in my opinion, in my house, that is Clancy's Corner at Locked On Cardinals, is DeAndre Hopkins is still elite. Has he missed some time with injury and PEDs? Absolutely. Does he still deserve a 3-year extension? For sure. The Arizona Cardinals need him much more than he needs the Arizona Cardinals. And this is still the clunkiness as we move away from the Keim era, where sometimes giving a little bit more cheese to somebody on the tail end of his peak for optics, for culture, for cohesion, for ushering in the new regime is worth it. And DeAndre Hopkins is worth it. Would you rather have, so they signed Zach Pascal to a 2-year deal earlier today. Would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins for 9 games or Zach Pascal for 17? DeAndre Hopkins is so much more important to this organization than people think. And I don't understand how short-memoried people are. So yes, again, 2023 is going to be a down year, most likely. Unless Kyler Murray comes back week 4 or something, and then they can win 7. Like, if this team is competitive, you don't want them to tank. You never want to. Nobody's going to tank. Nobody tanks. Every single employee of the NFL wearing shoulder pads is playing for their next contract or job or current job. So nobody's going to try and lose. But if Kyler Murray comes back in week 5 and they're even 1-4 and they win a game, they win 2 and they're 3-4 through week 7, we're having a completely different conversation. Most of my conversation about how the Cardinals are going to be very good in 2023 is because Kyler Murray is going to be out for the majority of the season, it seems like. And half the season is the majority of the season. Regardless of when Kyler Murray comes back, this is a long play. Everything the Cardinals are doing is going to be a long play. This year, not win-loss, culture shift, stability, leadership, trust in the new coaching staff and front office, and vice versa with the players. Dan Campbell, Detroit. That's the Cardinals this year. Win-loss doesn't matter. Play with fire. And the I'm not saying that the players last year didn't have some of the blame and this was all on Cliff and Steve Keim. That's not what I'm saying. It wasn't even about blame last year. It was just lack of direction, lack of vision, lack of anything. And that is leadership. Does Kyler Murray have a little piece of blame? Absolutely. Before he got hurt. Of course. This isn't just a bashing Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury podcast. Do I think that the Cardinals were set up to fail with those two in power? 100%. But what the Cardinals need in 2023 is that shift. And if DeAndre Hopkins buys into that shift, everything can change for the future of this team. And everything, not like, oh, they'll win a Super Bowl in 2024 if DeAndre Hopkins resigns. No. If DeAndre Hopkins wants to be a part of something that he knows will take another calendar year to really start to be implemented, and he chooses to do that, regardless of if he gets $20 million guaranteed, where he would have got half of that somewhere else for 2023, it doesn't matter at this point. You're not paying Terrell Suggs when he's 38, $7 million for a year, only to cut him midseason and him go win a Super Bowl in Kansas City. This isn't that. DeAndre Hopkins is going to play for another 5 seasons, so why not play for the Arizona Cardinals? The New Orleans Saints went from $45 million over the salary cap, $47 million, to now having $16 to $17 million in cap space. The salary cap can be manipulated if the organization wants to manipulate it. It's kicking the can down the road? Absolutely. Kyler Murray is going to restructure his contract once, if not twice. That's just what happens now. It's just what happens. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is an absolute home run for the next 3 seasons if the Arizona Cardinals find a way to re-sign him. Because going into 2024, remember, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, all healthy with young pieces on both sides of the ball with another stacked amount of draft picks in 2024 before the 2024 season. Could be a lot worse. What is the most worst, not including that English that I, flubbed on purpose, would be the Arizona Cardinals actually trading DeAndre Hopkins. What is the draft capital necessary for the Cardinals to move DeAndre Hopkins? It's updated. Should it still be a first-round pick? You'll have to wait and find out. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up. And now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So DeAndre Hopkins should 100% retire in Arizona Cardinal. They need to extend him. They need to keep him. Part of the culture shift, part of the trust of the new regime, part of the trust in Kyler Murray, part of buying in to the future of an organization who is on the precipice of changing their history. That's not overstating. That's not overblowing. That's not sugarcoating. The Arizona Cardinals are in a very favorable position because now they have the possibility to get better. They have the possibility to change. They have the possibility to reach heights that they've never reached. But if they do, in fact, move on from DeAndre Hopkins and trade him, I mean, just for the numbers, I'll just run down the numbers quickly here. This is all from Over the Cap. If they were to, they're not going to cut him pre-June 1st because they'll only save $8.9 million on the cap. If they cut him post-June 1st, they'll save almost $20 million. And it's the same for if they trade him pre and post. So they'll save an extra $11 million on their cap for 2024 if they trade or cut him post-June 1st. So that's the number. And we're still, 6 weeks away from that ballpark. Guess what happens between then? The draft. So there's two different wrinkles here, in my humblest of opinions, for what the Arizona Cardinals should do if they move on from him. If I take the other side of the coin, if I'm on the other side of the aisle, the Cardinals should move DeAndre Hopkins. What should that look like? Like, what is the bare minimum of what the Cardinals can receive back for DeAndre Hopkins instead of just keeping him for another year and figuring it out? It's still, to me, a second-round pick. And that's it. If that if that return starts with a third-round pick and no young player to come back, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? It's DeAndre Hopkins. It's DeAndre Hopkins. Injury concerns last couple of years? Yup. PEDs for 6 weeks? Absolutely. Is he still elite? 100%. When healthy, is a top 10 receiver in the league? Yup. Don't look at the Julio Jones trade to Tennessee. Don't look at the Brandon Cooks trade. Don't look at anything. This is DeAndre Hopkins, and this is right now. Every situation is different. So there's two different ways to look at this, two different options, two different scenarios, one of which is player to team for draft pick and or player. Okay, that's one. So for me, I still think they should target a first-round pick. The Chiefs would give a first-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. The last pick of the first round, I think that's still something that can be bargained. Now, will it happen? Probably not. But I still think DeAndre Hopkins is worth the first-round pick because for the Chiefs, it's not necessarily – it is about building for the future for them, absolutely. Their wide receiving core isn't great. Travis Kelce's going to be 100 really soon, even though, he's still at the top of his game, it seems like. But if you add DeAndre Hopkins and you want to have, Travis Kelce's last couple of years, you give DeAndre Hopkins a 2-year deal, it's worth overpaying by a round to get him. Now, you hope you can get some bidding war going, but I don't think that's happening. We would have seen that already, unless the Cardinals want to wait until after June 1st to maximize the cap relief you're going to get in 2023 and 2024. So that's one option. That's the more run-of-the-mill option. That's just that's like the evolution of trades in the NFL have gone from none. Like the only blockbuster trade we saw early on was like Champ Bailey for Willis McGahee. It's like, oh my God, there's a trade in the NFL. They're trading players. What is happening here? And then now it's just like the NBA light at least. This offseason was little less so. I mean, last season was absolute bonkers. Next season is going to be bonkerific. I hate myself for saying bonkerific. But DeAndre Hopkins, first-round pick, second-round pick at worst. You hope to send him to a middle team so they can get a mid-second-round pick. And then, the world is the Cardinals' oyster in 2023 draft because say they stick and pick at 3. Then you have 2 second-round picks. You can package those up and get back in the first round. Like, there's the getting a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins is the bare minimum that needs to happen, in my humblest of opinions. Now, the other option, the juicier option, the option where you could potentially get more for DeAndre Hopkins tangentially is as such. Say they want to move back. Say they want to move back to 7. Say the Raiders want to move up and draft a quarterback. They want to move to 3. They want to leapfrog Indy. They're willing to give away future capital, even though they don't have as much because they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, so the Packers have a couple of their picks. Say they trade with Vegas, or say Atlanta, even though I know Atlanta has said like there's not really in a running for a quarterback because of Desmond Ridder. Things happen crazily in the draft, okay? So say they move back to the middle, single digits of picks. And instead of getting a future first, and a second. Maybe for DeAndre, if you throw number 3 and DeAndre Hopkins in the mix, you get, maybe they'd throw in another first. Maybe they'd throw in a pick swap this season, a second this season, a first and a second next season. When it's tight knit like that, when it's like, okay, you're getting a draft pick and an elite wide receiver, maybe teams would be more apt to bump that up around. So instead of getting, an extra second this year, a first and a third next year, maybe you get a first and a second next year. To where it's like, for simplicity purposes, so you throw in DeAndre Hopkins, yeah, I'll bump that up around. You don't really have to think about it. The prize in the trade back is that number 3 overall pick so they can draft their quarterback. You know what goes great with a rookie quarterback? An elite wide receiver. Same package, same team, boop, flip, done. So those are the couple options, and I'm not sure, and I'm assuming they wouldn't, make it official until after June 1st. I don't know the logistics of what the Cardinals want to do. But if they were going to trade him, I feel like packaging him with the 3rd overall pick may garner the best return for the Cardinals. Having said all of that for the last 6 minutes, the Arizona Cardinals 100% should restructure, extend DeAndre Hopkins. Number 10 in red should be wearing that jersey as the last jersey he wears in the NFL. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.